The FK field pistol chambered in the unique 7.5 caliber cartridge did to the pistol world what 300 Blackout and 6.5 Creedmoor did to the rifle world. It opened up the discussion for what current small arms technology could be capable of if you tweak with the ammo just enough. Similar to the launch of all new calibers, only gun nerds and forum diehards argue over the validity and potential efficacy of its application. So rather than trying to contribute to that online conflict, we're going to go over what we believe the intentions are from the manufacturer and see what the PSD-C can do for you if you happen to be 7.5 curious.
(1776) Insurance. Most homeowners' insurance policies only cover up to $2,500 for firearms. I don't know about you, but I've got more than that in just magazines. 1776 gives you comprehensive coverage against breakage, theft, fire, and burglary for all your guns, and you don't have to give them your serial numbers.
The progenitor to the PSD-C is not new, and there's already a lot of ballistic gel test and velocity videos out there on the original pistol. The claim to fame for that cartridge is it being capable of delivering a 95 grain projectile at 2,000 feet per second coming out of a semi-auto handgun. For comparison, the closest 9mm I could find was about a 124 grain projectile going at about 1,400 feet per second. And to accomplish this, they needed an 8-inch barrel where the original BRNO did it in 6. That 600 feet per second difference affords you a pistol that approaches rifle-like performance in terminal ballistics. At almost double the muzzle energy and at a tenth the amount of bullet drop at 200 yards, the cartridge is clearly up to the task of being a real difference maker in pistol caliber PDWs and PCCs. Though there are other pistol cartridges that have this penetrative property, data on it shows the FN's offering required a 10.5-inch barrel to still have less than half the muzzle energy, and the bullet drop advantage over the 7.5 doesn't begin until around the 200-yard mark, where all pistol cartridges begin to flatline in terminal ballistics when compared to their more robust center-fired cousins. I think the guys at Tascosa Machine & Tool, who are the guys responsible for bringing the PSDs and obtainable 7.5 cartridges to the American market via Bushland, Texas, have a hell of a cartridge in which I would love to see in a compact PDW. But how did it fare in an almost a Glock 19/17 size pistol? The first big takeaway was the price. The original field pistol was on its way to $10,000. If I had to pick between that and nods, I think the occasional stargazing would make it an easy choice. Both the full-size and compact PSD are much more approachable at around $1,500 MSRP, and although expensive, it's the only gig in town for the 7.5 cartridge, and it does indeed do things your Glock 19 can't. That being said, I was a little underwhelmed by the single action only trigger. Typically, a trigger geometry and pull weight required to get a single action to operate lend themselves to a pretty solid feeling trigger pull. The PSD-C was up there with one of the worst single action triggers I've pulled in a while. It's still way better than most striker fired offerings, but still disappointing for a pistol north of $1,000. The safety was usable but a little stiff, and I have no complaints about the slide lock or release. They are all only operable for right-handed shooters, but being that I'm correct-handed, I experienced no issues while running the pistol. Ergonomically, I also think it's very okay, with the squared-off palm swell causing a bit of discomfort after a couple hundred rounds of firing. I do think the optic being from the factory ready to go on a direct mount for the acro is kind of cool and appropriate for a red dot sight likely to handle the 7.5 cartridge well enough. It was also a good thing that we had an acro on hand because our rear sight did fall off the gun after the first couple of magazines through the pistol. We do break stuff all the time, but again, I do think for $1,500, it should afford you a certain level of QC. It was easy for us to remount, and we tightened down the set screws, so I don't think we'll have any further issues with it. According to Tascosa, they are also working on an RMR adapter plate for those of you that don't have an acro, so I think that's also good to see. Despite all of my gripes upon the initial inspection of the gun, shooting it was rather uneventful, which is a good thing for a pistol. We did build drills and transitions side by side with a 1911 chambered in 45 AARP and a Glock 17 in 9mm. Taylor, Bobby, and myself all only saw small differences in time and performances on a rainy range day courtesy of the always generous Mr. Guns. Seriously, go check them out if you're in the DFW area. The PSD-C performed flawlessly despite its Warhammer-esque chambering. At speed, my complaints about the trigger became a bit more muted, and although the 7.5 round does begin to approach 10mm levels of snappy, the PSD-C did a good job of eating most of this recoil. Keeping the rounds in the A zone was a breeze, and at pistol distances, I think the pistol is perfectly serviceable. Where the C model of this pistol starts to maybe make less sense was at distance. We on multiple occasions have been able to hit targets well out to 100 yards with other 9mm and 45 ACP pistols. Even off a VTAC barrier and a bag, all three of us really struggled with a cartridge that on paper should have been up to the task. And the trigger complaints all came back in full force during this portion of our testing. Overall, the pistol was, for us, a reliable and manageable shooter in spite of the blazing hot cartridge. I EDC a 45 because, yes, I'm that guy, and Bobby and Taylor are responsible gun owners and carry a mid-size 9mm. None of us had issues shooting the gun and utilizing it in practical pistol shooting distances. I do think this pistol still makes more sense in a longer barrel to get more out of the 7.5 cartridge. We chronoed it at around 1750 feet per second. But even the C variant likely keeps its armor defeating capabilities, and a better trigger would help it immensely for shooting at distance. If you, like allegedly the XM7 program, want to gain the capabilities of defeating body armor, then I think the PSD is a reasonable solution at not a divorce-causing price. It's definitely smaller than any rifle or PDW trying to accomplish the same task, and if you decide to throw an acro on, it should provide a solid duty pistol from our limited review of the gun. This does come with a 10mm conversion kit in the box, which does make shooting it a lot more affordable than just slamming 7.5, but the PSD-C is much less interesting of a gun when converted away from 7.5. I would like to see more experimentation with the cartridge and do think it could make PDWs great again with its rather unique properties in such a manageable footprint. According to FK and Tascosa, they've spooled up production of the 7.5 cartridge here domestically to dramatically lower the price of the ammunition, and with further adoption and larger production batches, we could likely see it get under $1 a round, which is also making it more appealing for my fellow weekend warriors that don't have taxpayer-supported budgets. With that out of the way, here's our more subjective part of the review. So now that we are done with the more prepared notes, you're going to get the unprepared, likely unhinged machinations.
Just rambling.
Of a better little autistic boy and myself about our experience with the FK BRNO / PSD-C, which is the version that we have here. You've shot both, correct? The full size and the compact?
Yeah, I've shot the full size and this one. I would say that this is kind of approaching like almost the limit on like how small you could go with this cartridge, in my opinion. I mean, you could go small. I shot a 45-70 out of a Derringer.
That's true. That's true.
Shot it once and it wasn't really satisfying.
Yeah.
We shot a 45. We shot a couple 1911s before we got to shoot this, and it was pretty comparable. I'd say it's a little bit snappier, but I mean, it didn't hinder performance. You were still able to basically shoot as you would, standard pistol at, within 10, 15 yards.
Yeah, it's not so difficult to shoot that it was making my split times dramatically different. I think if I got more comfortable with the ergonomics of the pistol and because the presentation is going to be slightly different, it's more of a CZ presentation, and then I'm coming from a 1911. It's not exactly that. Also going from like an SRO to an acro was a little weird, but the pistol itself really didn't get in the way under what I would, if you went to a pistol class or if you went to the range like you normally do and you got your box of ammo and your target at 7 to 10 or 15 yards, this doesn't get in the way of that. Even when you're trying to shoot fast, even if you're trying to shoot a little bit more precisely, inside of those distances, no issue at all, which was surprising given, man, when you look at the ballistic charts for this, there's like all of these other lines, and then it's like the FK, and it's like this big, scary, the 7.5, with really only one peer in the 5.7 in only velocity. From 100 to 200 yards, maybe 357 SIG is close, but then you're probably losing out on weight, and so you're going to lose some energy with that. That is a scary cartridge. The
big claim of this is, the gun is really the cartridge and its ability to deliver terminal ballistics at range. So 9mm 45, you can make hits
Sure.
You know, at 100. 45, you're kind of, you know, mortaring shots at 100. 9 mil, you know, you're kind of lacking or starting to shed a lot of that hydrostatic shock that you would get.
Right.
Whereas this is vibe checking flesh at 100 yards.
When we got it, and I started having to do research on the back end, the gel ballistic stuff was crazy.
Penetrates pretty deep, which can be both good and bad. Good if, you know, you're trying to punch through body armor. Bad if
that's not present.
There's
right?
no body armor and you're in a house with other people in it.
Yeah, we kind of discussed this off camera, but we talked about like when you're talking about a person, like we're only so some of us are only so thick or so wide or whatever.
Yeah.
But like bears, hogs,
velocity is kind of what is able to is what pierces.
Right.
Weight gives you that punch, and it, you know, we've made the joke earlier about, you know, piercing damage versus, you know, bludgeoning damage.
Bludgeoning damage, yeah.
This is able to kind of pierce but still deliver energy
Like the
on the
actual
other
kinetic,
side of it. Yeah.
I think some of that, and it kind of goes to the cartridge itself, like 7.5, and I got to have a good conversation with the guys at FK. They're making an investment to try to bring this to the civilian market. They did it in Europe, which is rare for European gun companies to go and make something that's not a shotgun for the civilian market. And mind you, for them, it's more competition. They don't have in a lot of those countries.
Yeah, but there probably also may have been some military aspirations for this.
Given what was asked out of that cartridge, yes. I do think there's a big reason why you saw law enforcement, you even saw the military really step away from subguns, and it was where the MP5 used to crush in a lot of spaces. A lot of guys moved to the Mark 18. And even in PDs, where you saw a lot of SWAT teams, they're just saying, oh, well, whatever. I got my 1911 and a shield. I'm doing good. They went to PDWs and they went to rifles just because terminal ballistics. This ends the fight now. When you talk about hydrostatic shock and all that stuff. And then
North
barriers.
Hollywood kind of, you know,
changed the
game. You get a guy in a Kevlar suit running around with a G3.
Right. And so in an urban setting, and this is where it kind of starts to make more sense to, I think, the American citizen, that we have the constitutional right to defensive use of a firearm. Man, between 0 and 150 yards, that is an attitude adjuster. And you can look at the terminal ballistics on performance. We have most of the data for a 6-inch barrel, but you're losing probably 200 to 300 feet per second on this. This in like a TP9 format. This in like a Flux Raider
Dude,
format.
7.5 and a PDW would be nasty.
Oh, yeah. I like all those things that like it, and I
long range shots with a handgun is super hard. Even so, any shot at 100 yards with a handgun is pretty hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier with a 5.7 because it just how flat the projectile is. You don't have to you don't have to really guess, you know, your hold. You basically just hold straight on and it, you know, it goes. And I love 5.7 for that reason. It's really easy for, you know, especially newer shooters or people who aren't, you know, fans of recoil to get a lot of shots on target pretty accurately because it's a very flat shooting gun.
Yeah.
This is also a very flat shooting gun. That being said, the selling point is that this cartridge is able to deliver impressive terminal ballistics at range.
Yeah.
So if you can't connect at that range, you know, it's kind
Doesn't help.
It's a moot point.
Yeah.
But still, this thing does what a lot of other handguns can't at 50 yards.
Yeah. And it, dude, at 10, right now, if you're getting it from FK, like Europe, you're going to be spending like, I think it's like $90 for a box of 50 rounds or something like that.
Yeah, it's over $1 a round.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they include the 10 millimeter conversion kit.
Yeah.
So that you can get some reps. Also, the 10 mil fits in the 7.5 magazine, so you don't have to worry about getting different mags. Just pretty nice.
Yeah.
But it's up there in price. They did say that they were bringing manufacturing here, so that's going to bring down price. And obviously, as it proliferates, it gets cheaper to produce in volume. So hopefully that price will come down.
I think right at under $1, between $1 to 50 cents a round, it starts to make sense. Only because, and I hear the 5.56 guys running 8-inch guns, right? They're trying to have a discussion here. This can get in such a small package. You look at something like a Flux Raider, or you look at something like a Bravo chassis, or even this with a stock, can collapse down into fanny pack sized. Which
three points of contact make it a lot easier to reach out to those distances where that cartridge begins to make a lot of sense.
Yep.
And so this would be an absolute wild gun in the PDW.
And it's cool because it is something that I think caters to most people live in major cities as far as population is concerned. This starts to make more sense where a rifle is one, expensive, and two, very hard to conceal or very hard to put in places. In a defensive use case, 100 yards is going to be much harder to
I'm not
legally
saying that
articulate.
it's nice to have that capability. I think it's really cool to have that capability.
Yes.
But if you're going to be in a situation where you need that capability, are you going to be sitting there with a handgun lining up a shot at 100 yards, or are you going to be reaching for a rifle?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mean. I think in a PDW 7.5 would crush. If the market will do it, dude, suppressed in a small form factor, this thing would be rad. We had no malfunctions with this, and it fed just like it would a CZ or any of those things. So.
Yeah. No, it ran fine. I mean, especially with it being a hammer fired gun, like I'm not really worried about it like having an issue there. As long as it's feeding, I think you're gonna be fine. I'm not really worried about like a light primer strike.
I don't know. I think it's cool. If you guys have range time on this, put it in the comment section below. I think it's very few people did. This was the first time I've ever shot the cartridge or the platform. You were lucky enough to get to shoot it before me.
I think it is a compelling argument, at least for the body armor side of it, and the range at which it's able to deliver that energy. If you're able to make hits, making a hit with a handgun at 100 yards is not something that's easy for a lot of new shooters. Even some people who shoot quite a bit will struggle with it. It's not impossible, but again, especially like in a
high pressure situation,
high pressure, nerve-wracking scenario, you got the shakes. It's more difficult than that. And any deviation at the barrel, you only have 2 points of contact, is going to translate to inches, feet down range, and now you have a round that's going.
Yeah, skipping that off the pavement versus my 45 ARP is a little different.
Yeah. Well, at 100 yards, it's kind of just like airsoft.
Yeah, basically.
Airsoft.
It's very spicy airsoft round. But if you guys have any experience with it, put it in the comment section. If you don't, argue with me anyways. We have fun with it. Go check out the forums. I'm likely going to do a post on this. Or if you want to have a slightly spicier conversation, you can go check out our Discord. Bobby is going to put that in the description section below. Or go check us out on socials. But go shoot guns. It's cool. This stuff's really, really cool. And I think it's an exciting new opportunity, especially on the civilian side of things, to have really cool weapons platforms that are actually optimized for us.
Yeah.
And not some foreign dignitary that's got an unlimited taxpayer budget. Those buttholes.